Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Thursday, the 13th of February. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Ms. Kernshire.
Here.
Okay. Leads us now to matters of special privilege, and today we have the opportunity to award and present an Excellence of Service Award to Emanuel Lewis. So we can drag him out of his dungeon in the back.
Watkins.
No, Watkins, excuse me. Lewis, thinking about TV star. Emanuel Watkins. Please give me a pat.
He's a star to us.
He is. Thanks for coming out of the hole back there. So we have a resolution here, and so Emanuel works for the city in our IT department. So Emanuel has faithfully and honorably served the citizens of Williamsburg for 21 years as the network administrator in the IT department. Emanuel's greatest strengths are his creativity and initiative to not only find the best and most appropriate solutions to a problem, but to ensure that it is implemented as it should be. His attitude is always one of how can we best solve the problem or fix the issue, and always has an eye on how it will affect the employees of the city and the city residents. He has worked with the department and with vendors to complete and upgrade the entire city network, ensuring that it's future-proof for years to come, while also ensuring that it impacts the city's employees was minimized. He has worked tirelessly to ensure that the security was not only built into these new systems, but that it was properly configured to deploy to ensure that the city's systems and data are consistently protected. In addition, he is the go-to person for all the audiovisual systems and systems designed across the city. His knowledge of these systems is the practical understanding of design and impact of the end user has resulted in the state-of-the-art systems such as those found in the Stryker Center, Williamsburg's community building, and the new fire station, and soon the new police station. Emanuel Watkins is an exemplary city employee and is vital to the success of the information technology to the city of Williamsburg. He is hereby recognized for his dedication to excellence in keeping with the best traditions of a public servant here in the city of Williamsburg. So congratulations, sir.
I just want to say thank you, Mayor Pons and City Council, and thank you for city staff for the nomination. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, so it takes us now to City Council minutes. We have a set of minutes that need to be approved. Would anybody like to make any changes or corrections or make a motion to approve?
So I move that the minutes from the special called meeting, our swearing in on January the 9th, and from our January the 9th meeting be approved.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire. Aye.
Okay. Leads us now to our public hearings, and first is a public hearing of consideration and actions of a license agreement with the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation to install a footer within the Nassau right-of-way as part of the reconstruction of the historic First Baptist Church. Ms. Shelton.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons, members of council. The Colonial Williamsburg Foundation has requested a license to install just under a foot-long footer as part of the reconstruction of the First Baptist Church on Nassau Street. The footer would extend into the right-of-way, not quite a foot, and allow for the stairs to be placed in the position that they need to be. The area is shown in the little bubble on the top right-hand corner of the drawing. In your packet is a typical license agreement. In order to allow the foundation to do this, they're required to install and then put back the right-of-way where the footer lives. They're required to maintain those structures in the right-of-way. repair them if they become disrepaired, and indemnify the city for any damages, as well as insure the city as part of the encroachment into the right-of-way. This is typical and similar to things that we've done at the coffee house and with the bus stop in rights-of-way in Colonial Williamsburg, and so the staff's recommendation is that City Council authorize the city manager to execute the license agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. This wouldn't in any way impact pedestrians walking through, I guess it's,
It won't. It's a footer, so it will be under the ground.
okay. Any other questions for Ms. Shelton? With that, I'll open the public hearing. If anybody would like to come forward and speak to this matter, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and come back to council for discussion. I'd just say I think it's appropriate that we do this in support of the First Baptist Church Reconstruction. I think this is a monumental building and undertaking by Colonial Williamsburg that supports the history of Williamsburg and our nation, so I'm all in support of it.
Yeah, I am as well. It's a small request to support such an important project.
Same, I agree.
I agree.
I also agree.
Somebody like to make a motion?
So I move that City Council grant a license to the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation to encroach into the right-of-way of Nassau Street in order to install a footer as part of the reconstruction of the historic First Baptist Church, and authorize the city manager to execute the license agreement.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey,
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire.
Aye.
Okay. Next public hearing we have is consideration and action regarding PCR number 24-026, a special use permit to allow apartments in the LB2 district and to increase the density from 8 to 14 units per acre, allowing 11 apartments at 1006 Richmond Road. Ms. Griffin, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Pons and members of City Council. The city has received a request from the applicant Demetrius Tarakis, who is the owner of 1006 Richmond Road, in order to have a special use permit to add multifamily apartments to the LB2 district. The zoning district currently does not allow apartments except for a special use permit. The owner is also requesting an increase in the density. The density now in the LB2 is 8 units per net acre, and he's requesting this density to be 14 units per net acre. The property is located at the corner of Richmond Road and Matoka Court. It's approximately 0.796 acres, and here you'll see the math that goes into calculating density. So at the allowable 8 units per net acre, there would be 6 units on the second and third floor, and if it is allowed to be 14 units per acre, it is 11 units on the second and third floor. This is a configuration of the second floor. It would have 2 one-bedroom apartments and 4 studio apartments. One of the 1 bedrooms here would be ADA accessible. On the third floor, you would have 5 one-bedroom apartments. On the first floor, he would have commercial. However, that does not come into the conversation of the special use permit, as commercial uses are allowed by right in the LB2 district. So for example, by right, in this district, there could be a bake shop, a bank, convenience establishments such as a barber shop or beauty parlor, spas, dental offices, a museum or art gallery, photo printing, and restaurants without a drive-through would be allowed on the first floor by right. Anytime we're looking at a special use permit, we do go over 6 criteria that's required by the zoning ordinance, and all of these criteria have to be met in order for an approval of the special use permit. And also, council has the authority to provide additional conditions to the property owner. So we'll go over the first 3. The first is if the use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan, and if the use is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the LB2 zoning district, and if the use is in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and surrounding neighborhoods. The property is located in the mixed-use, land use category within the comprehensive plan. It does call for a mix of flexibility in land uses, such as apartments by special use permit, single-family dwellings, and commercial uses. And this particular land use designation is implemented by the LB2 Limited Business Neighborhood District. The zoning district, again, is LB2, and it calls for a range of uses, including single-family, duplexes, banks, bake shops, all the things that I just named, and of course, multifamily if by special use permit. So the applicant here today is requesting to be in compliance with the zoning district by coming to you for a special use permit. And third, we're looking at the character of the district. So just to go back and to clarify, staff and the Planning Commission agreed that this particular use is in keeping with the comprehensive plan and will be in keeping with the zoning district if it's approved by City Council. In looking at the character of the district, this particular property is in the Arts and Cultural District. This district was approved by Council in 2011, and the purpose was to encourage and to enhance the city's creative economy as an economic development initiative. On this corridor is active commercial, offices, residentials, areas. There is insurance office, a radio station, restaurants, and a student apartment, and blocks up the street going into up Richmond Road is Midtown Row, and the Matoaka Court residential neighborhood is located to the north of this building. Matoaka Court is single-family detached neighborhood with a mix of owner-occupied and rental properties. As I stated before, a portion of this building will retain its commercial use. It is consistent with past occupants. This building was built in 1972, and for many years it was the home of a bank. Wells Fargo recently moved out. At first, they took out the offices on the second and third floors, and as of last year, they were only on the first floor. They've now moved out entirely. There was a church on the third floor, and that church is now gone, so the building is completely vacant. And staff and the Planning Commission believe that the addition of residential uses is not contrary to the current components of what we see in the neighborhood. The fourth, fifth, and sixth criteria looks at the adequacy of essential services like public services such as streets, drainage facilities, fire protection, and public water and sewer. Number 5 is if the use will result in the destruction or loss or damage of any significant ecological or scenic or historical important property there or use there, or if the property or use shall be designed, sited, and landscaped so the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate use of development for adjacent property owners. And looking at criteria 4, what we see is that this is the use of water for the proposed 11 units. This shows the average flow, gallons per day, the flow duration, the average flow, and the peak flow, and it has been concluded that these apartments will not deteriorate the water supply or water quality in the city. A traffic impact analysis was conducted on December the 3rd. This was conducted per the request of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission had the 5 questions that they wanted the traffic impact analysis to answer. The first, they wanted to know the trip generations for the allowable commercial uses with the building at capacity. The second question was the trip generations for the proposed uses, the multifamily, retail, or restaurant. Number 3 was what is the traffic count and patterns on Richmond Road, Monticello Avenue, Mount Vernon, and Matoaka Court? And then how will the proposed uses, the multifamily apartments and the studios, impact the traffic? And then number 5, Matoaka Court was characterized as a cut-through street, and they wanted to know where was this traffic generated. And so here we look at existing traffic volumes. This map shows that Richmond Road has a daily traffic volume of 18,000 vehicles. North of Monticello Avenue, it's 8,000 vehicles, and south of Richmond Road. At Monticello Avenue in Lafayette, there's a daily traffic volume of 14,000 vehicles west of Richmond Road and 8,200 vehicles east of Richmond Road. Matoaka Court has no available VDOT traffic counts. However, based on available peak hour counts, the daily volume is estimated at 690 vehicles. Mount Vernon is the same. It has no available VDOT daily traffic count. However, based on available peak hour counts, the daily volume is estimated at 600 vehicles a day. And looking at cut-through traffic, this map here was generated from Google Maps, and it did show that people were using Matoaka Court and Mount Vernon as a cut-through to avoid Richmond Road and that intersection there. Approximately 16 eastbound and 5 westbound vehicles made a cut-through route on Route from Mount Vernon Avenue to Matoaka Court. And in the PM peak hour, approximately 22 eastbound vehicles and 4 westbound vehicles made a cut-through route on Mount Vernon and Matoaka Court. This table here shows trip generations. It shows that there were potentially approximately 437 daily trips, 34 AM peak hour trips, and 40 PM peak hour trips. And I do think the traffic engineer should be here to answer any additional questions you all have about this analysis. These two tables here, one is for trip generation for previous land uses for commercial and the office and the bank that was there, and then the comparison of proposed and previous trip generations. So table 2 indicates that the previous land use has a trip generation potential of approximately 530 daily trips, with 59 AM peak hour trips and 104 PM peak hour trips. This exceeds the current proposed trip generation. So pretty much what this is saying is the previous uses at the building, the trip generations for those uses will exceed the trip generations for the proposed uses of the apartments and the first floor retail. And table 3 does this comparison here, and concluding that trip generations are decreased with the proposed uses. This here shows, table 4 and table 5 shows trip generation for land uses allowable by the zoning. So the list that I just went through, here it's a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, and then an office. And then at the bottom here, proposed, what we're looking at, his 11 apartments and studios, along with the restaurants on the first floor. The previous land uses had a trip generation potential of approximately 1611 daily trips, with 160 AM peak hour trips and 125 peak hour trips. And again, this shows that the trip generation of what was previously in the building it's increased, is more than what is being proposed, and that is shown in table 5. The level of service here is a B. It's considered a very good level of service for peak hour operations for a stop control approach, and that just means the stop sign that's there on our major streets such as Richmond Road. The proposed land use operates with almost 2 seconds less daily delay than in the AM and peak hours than what the uses that were previously there. With that, the Planning Commission and the city staff did believe that it met criteria 4. Criteria 5, the property is fully developed. The proposed uses will not destroy any existing ecological, scenic, or historic features. And then number 6, the proposed use shall be designed, sited, and landscaped so that the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development of adjacent properties or surrounding neighborhoods. This shows the parking requirements in the Midtown Parking District. This use is located in the Midtown Parking District. It shows here that with the 4 studios, 1.25 spaces, plus 0.25 for visitor parking is required. That's 6 spaces altogether for the studio is required per the zoning ordinance. And for the 1 bedrooms, 11 spaces are required. If we look at the restaurants, 3,168 square feet, 8 spaces are required. And then restaurants, again, with the patio, is 8 spaces are required for a total of 33 spaces. The parking lot now has 56 spaces in it. So we do see here that parking is adequate. However, I will say that if both of the restaurants have a patio, the parking will exceed. So both of the restaurants could not have a patio there. It would have to be reduced because then it goes over the allowable parking spaces that can be there. This property is located in the AP3 district. That means it's under the purview as far as the exterior design of the Architectural Review Board. The owner did go to the Architectural Review Board for conceptual review in August of last year, and they received approval after some changes at the December 10th, 2024 meeting. There was a condition on that approval, and it was just that the awnings that are shown here now be closed. Right now, those awnings are open on the side, and the ARB wanted those awnings to be right there, closed. So Again, the staff recommends approval of PCR 24026 because it meets the criteria to approve special use permits according to the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission at their January 15th meeting also voted 4-0 to recommend approval. I will say that the owner is willing to have the condition, and he stated this at the Planning Commission meeting, but it did not move forward. But he is willing to have the occupancy of all the units be no more than 2 per unit, and that includes the studio and the 1-bedrooms. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Great report. I do have a couple questions. As it relates to parking and occupancy, when we look at the parking requirements for a studio apartment, and it's the same as a 1-bedroom apartment, it's 1.25 plus 0.25 for a visitor.
Yes.
Would that change if a studio has 2 tenants in it?
No, the parking doesn't change, and it's not based on occupancy. It's based on the, whether it's multifamily or townhouse. It does not change based on occupancy. It's based on the use.
Okay. Would this property with the rental units be subject to the rental inspection ordinance?
Yes, it would. They are in the rental inspection district.
Okay, and that would be, as I recall, that inspection would occur every 4 years?
It occurs every 4 years if it is in good standing. So there are certain criteria that our inspectors look at, and if it meets all of those criteria to be allowed for every 4 years, then it would be allowed. If not, if there's some discrepancies, then it would be either on a 1 or 2 year cycle.
I don't have any questions at this point.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Couple questions, one related to the traffic study. Is it customary to just conduct a 1-day traffic study?
I did ask the engineer that question, and I've only met him a few times, so I don't see his face, but I can tell you what he said. 1-day count samples are typical for most traffic impact studies due to the cost of data collection. However, importance is placed on picking an appropriate date for collecting counts. So they made sure counts were taken on a day that William and Mary was fully in class, and Williamsburg, James City County Public Schools were also in session. They also take the counts they compare with historical benchmarks. If the new counts are low, then they consider recounting for another day. In this particular case, the volumes were consistent or even above the most recent traffic counts published by VDOT, so they were considered reliable. It says traffic varies from day to day, but the methodology used for both counting traffic and projecting into the future were consistent with industry standards for traffic impact analyses. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. For me, looking at the traffic, obviously I'm not a traffic engineer, but looking at the traffic study, with all the concern about cut-through traffic on Matoka Court, it seems like there would have been, for me, to justify, I don't think it would have changed the outcome, their recommendation on the traffic study that it doesn't have a detrimental impact, but more data would have certainly helped me, speaking for myself, see more clearly what the traffic counts are instead of a 1-day study on a Tuesday, I believe it was. So, and then on clarification, so by right, a retail space on the first floor can still use the drive-through?
So a drive-through is not allowed for a restaurant. I would believe that the zoning administrator would make the same assumption, even though it doesn't say retail without a drive-through. We customarily don't see retail with the drive-through. And so our ordinance doesn't say, but it does say a restaurant cannot have a drive-through. And with that, I don't see anywhere else actually in our zoning ordinance that says retail with a drive-through. So I would assume that a retail space would not have a drive-through or be allowed to have a drive-through at that location.
That's all I have for now.
I'd like to just follow up on that.
Yes.
Given the use of the previous use of the drive-through, a new applicant in that bottom floor commercial space, whether it's retail or restaurant, would have to apply to use the drive-through or construct a drive-through?
Our ordinance, and I have it right here, specifically says restaurants without drive-through windows. So restaurants without drive-through windows can't even apply for a special use permit. There are no restaurants that could come here and have a drive-through window, whether by right or by special use permit.
Fair to assume that the drive-through wouldn't be there.
Exactly, and he's proposed that the drive-through would be eliminated.
Okay, thank you. Current Chair?
Great, thank you. That actually leads exactly to a question that I was going to ask to clarify, because from Matoka Court, there's the back entrance, as I say, the closest,
Yes.
farthest back. Then there's the drive-through, is now the drive-through space, and then
Yes.
there's also an entrance that's closest to Richmond Road.
Yes.
In this proposal, is the drive-through entrance eliminated?
Yes, in this proposal, the drive-through exit, because it's only an exit from inside because people are driving out of the teller.
Okay,
So that exit is eliminated with this proposal.
okay.
So in Matoka Court, there would be the closest one at the intersection of Richmond, and then the one that's closer to the residents in the back. Those two would remain open as he's proposed.
Okay, even whether there's a patio or no patio, it's closed no matter what?
That is, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then I also noted from your report, I just want to make sure that I understand, is there was a discussion about these entrances and exits in the report, and, given some of the concern of cut-through traffic, I just wanted to clarify, would there be any concern from a flow perspective or a planning perspective to closing the entrance or exit that's the farthest back from Richmond Road?
From a planning perspective, yes, it would be concerned, mainly because you then only have exiting from that around the corner when people are turning onto Matoka Court. And so I think you would have stacking there, and you wouldn't have two entrances or exits where people are able to use two instead of one. So I think you may have a stacking issue.
But there
with
still
closing
would
one.
be the way to get in and out facing Richmond Road.
There would be.
Right, so it's a Richmond Road property, you could come and go off of Richmond Road.
Yes, you could.
Okay, thank you.
Just follow up if I may. I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. I think you're going to take the words out of my mouth.
I don't know. In closing the middle entrance, would that be a physical barrier or just signage?
He would like to put a physical barrier there to show that it is closed, and that would be some type of, we're thinking some type of landscaping or nice feature there to show that it is not open to
That'd be
to
fixing the
anyone.
curb and gutter?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
That'd be eliminating the curb and gutter so that's a side, more of a
It would not eliminate the curb and gutter. If
drive
that's,
pan, rather.
that would still be there. If that's a condition that the council would like to place on that, it could be, but as proposed, it's a barrier that's put there so people know that they can't go in and out. An aesthetically nice barrier, but it's not going to be, that area will still be open.
I apologize.
No problem.
Ms. Ramsey?
Thank you very much for the report, and I do have a couple questions. So to go back to the parking we were just talking about, I don't know if you've got the
I can
picture
bring
that you
that
can
back
put up there. I'm not real good about directional, whether it's north, south, east,
Okay.
or
Up,
west.
down, over there, and there.
Yeah. So,
Is this what you wanted, or?
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't know if you wanted the parking, let's see if I have that.
The parking exits, well,
I don't know if I have a good one, let's see.
wouldn't it
It might be in the report and not the first one.
Well, so
Okay.
that's good. So what we're talking about, looking at the building, we've got the parking lot in the front, and so it would have an entry and an exit. So anyone who's using the retail or restaurants or things like that would have easy flow in and out from the, what I call the front parking lot, correct?
Agreed. Yes, ma'am.
And then what we're talking about in the back is where the little brown area is.
Here?
That's no up a little bit, right where the brown area is, that's the current drive-through, right?
Yes.
And so what is being proposed there is a patio instead of the drive-through.
Correct.
And you said that both restaurants could not have separate patios because of the parking. Could they have a shared patio, or is there a certain size patio that could be?
The sizes that he's proposing take the parking over what he has here now.
Okay, so the size of the patio would need to be approved based on the amount of parking spaces that are available, right?
Yes, and that would be done when he comes in for his zoning permit to actually open the business.
And so looking at that same thing where those little white marks are down at Matoka Court, where the
Yes.
M starts, that's where you're saying that a barrier would be put to prevent any exit from there.
Correct.
So you were saying that if we put a condition on to close the back parking lot, the one between the two green bushes there,
This is hard to do, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yes, right here.
there, that there
Yes.
might become a stacking issue.
Yes, because then the only entrance and exit that you have is here and here. And you'll have apartments where people will be parking, think thoughtfully in the back, and they would have to go around to either Richmond Road or to Matoka Court.
But if we are assuming that the majority of them are likely to be college students, anyone who has tried to park on campus knows it's a whole lot better and cheaper to park here than trying to find a spot on campus. So I wouldn't see that there'd be a lot of flow of the residents in and out of that parking lot really during the day. And it's close enough to a lot of different places, both on campus, Midtown Row, et cetera, that I would think that a lot of people would walk instead of moving their vehicle all the time.
They could.
So could we make it a condition for that back parking exit to be closed as well?
Yes, that would be the purview of council to make that condition. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I just want to go back to the inspections for
Yes.
a minute, too. So we said that it's under the rental inspection program, and as we talked, how frequently that occurs.
Yes.
And having been a landlord, I know that that includes both interior and exterior inspections.
Correct.
And also, it's done on a regular basis every 4 years, as long as the landlord and the property is in good standing.
Yes.
But your department also responds to calls, concerns, complaints. Is that correct?
Yes, property maintenance goes out, and we'll review that and send out a property maintenance violation if one is found.
And so if something is found, particularly in the exterior for something like this, I believe the landlord has a certain amount of time to correct it.
They have 30 days to correct it.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want people to realize that it's the same sort of standard as any single-family home that's also in the rental inspection program.
For property maintenance, yes. And for rental inspection, there's 11 units. And once a multifamily goes over 10 units, the state allows us to inspect 10% of those units. And so here, that would be 2 units that would be able to be inspected through the rental inspection program.
And from
and
my
let me-
recollection,
That, not correct.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in. If there's a problem, then the number of inspections that can be done at that property increases.
right. And a lot of that has to do with safety, GFI outlets, windows,
Smoke
paint,
detectors.
smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors.
No, the state does not have that in there to look at carbon monoxide detectors, but they do have smoke detectors.
Okay. Thank you. And then one last thing you said about the awnings in the front,
Yes.
that was a condition of the ARB. So has that been included in the revised proposal?
I don't have a revised proposal that shows the renderings of the enclosed awnings. I don't, however, that is something that we would get once he provides his building permits, and we would
Okay.
make sure that it's done. So it's not odd that that's not featured here, that slight change.
But anything that the ARB required would be included in, like the application for a building permit or something to ensure that it took place?
Yes, so actually, when a building permit comes in, it first goes to the ARB division of the department, and we review the building permit to make sure that it is the same, and we sign off on that, and then goes to zoning, and they sign off, and then we have inspections along the way that follow the inspections of the building inspectors, and so the person that does our ARB staff for that, she goes out and she will approve or deny. And that goes also into the CO process. So if there's something that we think is life safety, something dealing with the building, or ARB, a CO cannot move forward if it's not done.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, well, thank you, Ms. Griffin, for the wonderful presentation. I had one question. In the proposal, were there any findings during peak times especially, or parking would be more limited, or where the potential for overflow parking into other lots would occur?
No. In reading through the traffic impact analysis, that was not something that was seen. And they have an extra 20-odd spaces there than what they are required to have. So we did not anticipate that, and that's not shown as a scenario in the impact analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. We may have more for you. With that, I'll open the public hearing. If anybody would like to come forward, I see the applicants here. Would you to make any comments? You don't have to.
A quick minute. Thank you, Mayor Pons, Vice Mayor Dent, and council members. I bring this proposal forward as an adaptive reuse of a 54-year-old building. Not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but trying to improve a antiquated building that's has its extended life is basically done. We're going to gut the whole building, bring it up to code, and give it a nice facelift. I'd respectfully request that we leave the one entrance on Matoka open due to traffic flow, and not just traffic flow, but our architect has recommended that we also leave that entrance open for life safety reasons. I don't know, Mr. Dent, you could probably comment on this, but in case there's an emergency with the building, fighting a fire on the building, he recommended that entrance remain open for those type purposes. Also for servicing the trash dumpster that's in the rear of the building. But I'll leave that up to y'all to make the final decision. I did proffer that I would only put 2 people in each one of these apartments. They are studio and 1 bedrooms. They're not 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. This application differs from various other apartment applications you've had recently. Those were new builds. This is retrofitting an old building. I have plenty of parking. I believe it's a good fit with other properties that are adjacent to it, and I think it generates some new sales tax revenue for the city with the commercial space downstairs, and I hope you look favorably upon the project. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Flackis. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward? Welcome, Ms. Kaiser. State your name and address for the record, please.
Kaiser, 609 Richmond Road. I'm glad the building is going to be made for reuse. And I think that the visuals of it are acceptable. I guess I have a general worry. We're basically arguing over 3 extra rooms, if I have this correct, since zoning would allow for 8. So all of this discussion over the course of several meetings has been over whether 3 additional residential units can be allowed here. It seems to run contrary to the message we're getting as city residents. One is that neighborhoods are, the city has vowed to preserve and protect neighborhoods. It doesn't say what from, but I assume one of those possible threats is exactly this kind of issue where you have light, noise, traffic, and trash pollution all threatening the part of a little neighborhood. This also doesn't take into account what may happen with traffic flow. If there's going to be a traffic circle roundabout 2 blocks over, that cut through that, Google Maps recommends is going to inundate Mount Vernon to Matoka to the college and vice versa. So it's almost, the traffic study in my head is already obsolete because it's not taking into consideration how hugely different traffic flow could be. When we come to city council and say, hey, this really worries us, and the special use permits are allowed to go through, it makes us feel, I think there's the risk that there's a trust breach. And I don't know how you put a price on that, but it might be worth more than 3 apartments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to council for further discussion. So I'll just kick off. One of the things that I'm mindful of is, now 14 and a half years on city council and 8 years on planning commission, we've always struggled with use of older buildings and trying to understand how we can make properties that have outlived their useful life find a new life. And so we've talked about adaptive reuse, and we've seen that in some hotels, seen buildings become banks and banks become restaurants, and I think that's an appropriate outcome for us. One of the things I'm also mindful of is when years ago, we were looking at the comp plan and looking at mixed use as a way to help spur redevelopment of some of the older properties in town. And the genesis of that was, well, we wanted to protect our commercial corridors with some commerce, and so we said 2/3 residential and 1/3 commercial, allowing for some residential to come into the area because, population is important to the community. We have to have people to be a thriving, vibrant community. And we also have to have people that support our commerce. And so that was the mixed use thought then. And I think this reuse of this property kind of ties right into that, allowing this mixed use. When that building was built, commerce was different in Williamsburg. Traffic flows were different in Williamsburg. And there was a bank across the street. This building was a bank. There was a bank at the corner, which is now Meadows. We've seen that industry kind of leave the city, and it's followed the traffic patterns out into the county more or less. And so that corridor is less commercial than it once was. And so I think housing is a good use, and what's being proposed allows for the protection of some commercial. And I would want to make sure that we protect that commercial on the first floor so that one of the concerns that I hear is that one day the applicant may come and ask for the first floor to be residential. And so I'd like to see that we try to maintain that first floor commercial and allowing the additional apartments on the second, third floor. So I think this is a good use. I think, addressing the outflows of the cars coming onto Matoka is an important conversation that we have to have. I think the proffer to limit the number of students, or the number of tenants, excuse me, because he has said at the Planning Commission, it's not designed just for students. This is designed for Gen Zs, I think you said. Yeah, or whoever. So, but, I think it's safe to say that there'll be some students there. But we need to be very cognizant of the impact of Matoka. notwithstanding what the traffic analysis says, that there's actually going to be less traffic as a result of this use than if it were more intense commercial use. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Vice Mayor, and maybe I'll have some more comments later.
Thank you. So the mayor brought up a point that I was concerned with based on a recent application we had a few months ago where retail space was not leased, and then they wanted to convert that to additional residential units. Ms. Griffin, could you talk about that process, how?
So if there was ever a time that the retail did not come into fruition, the applicant would have to come back before the Planning Commission and City Council to request a special use permit in order to put first floor residential at 1006 Richmond Road. And then, of course, it would be the purview of the City Council to approve or disapprove that. If the council wanted to put a condition that not be allowed, I would see that would be something that could happen with the wording from the city attorney, of course, that is a possibility.
Thank you, because that was going to be my next question. Is it possible to put a condition on this property that we couldn't have another request for conversion to residential? And I too am concerned about the traffic. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I didn't get. I understand the outcome of the traffic impact analysis. I just wish there had been more data to support it. One of the things that concerns me is over the years, at least for me, and I think other council members have as well, what we've heard a shortage of is we've heard people talk about 2 and 3 bedroom apartments and the availability in the city. And what we keep seeing is efficiencies in 1 bedrooms, and also the fact that doing research on what's been approved in recent years, Baymont started their conversion, Baymont Hotel, 76 units. Out of those 76 units, 56 efficiency, 16 1-bedroom, only 4 2-bedroom. But they do have an affordable housing component, which is another thing that concerns me. The Governor's on North Henry, 162 units. I believe the number was 14 of those that were below market value.
There was a percentage, I believe it was, I don't want to quote.
You don't have to.
It was like 13%
I mean, just
that
there,
had to.
but there was some affordable
Yes.
component included
sir.
with that. 530 Mill Neck, we had a couple in that small project. There are a couple duplexes included. 8 townhouses on Patriot Lane, 95 townhouses, 56 condos, Greenwood Village and Quarter Path. Tutter's Neck, 86 townhomes, and then you go back to Midtown Row, is 240 units that could accommodate 624 residents, and then we recently approved 7 more units. So that's, when you keep hearing there's a housing shortage, I think council has done a pretty good job in recent years of addressing housing shortages. So that's one thing that concerned me with the project, that we're back to not really affordable housing and not addressing the need of efficiencies or 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom, but elect to for efficiencies in 1-bedrooms. I too think that we need to consider, if this is approved, that we consider blocking off those the exits, entrance and exit on Matoka Court to try to eliminate the cut-through traffic there. And as been pointed out, the traffic circle, I'm hoping that if the traffic circle is ever approved and comes to fruition, that it would eliminate some of that cut-through traffic, because it'll be easier to get through Richmond Road, but that's down the road. So I do think that the building's obviously not very attractive as it stands now, and we have talked about adaptive reuse. If the building looks anything close to the renderings, it would be a huge improvement to what sits there today. But I've really struggled with adding these additional efficiencies in one-bedroom units. But I think if we have certain conditions, I could support it.
Thank you, Ms. Crunchier.
Yes, so thank you. Yeah, I've paid more attention to this building lately than I think any other building in town. I like got out of my car, they just like stared at it for like 15 minutes. Everybody probably thought I was having a breakdown. But I think one thing about it is it doesn't look good. It's not a good-looking place, and it's kind of right there in a spot of town where a lot of people drive by. And 1972, it looks like 1972, and I wasn't born in 1972. So, I think that we were, I'm just rubbing it in, I think, though, in all seriousness, we have to consider what we have. There's the consequence of doing something, and there's the consequence of doing nothing. And where can we find compromise that really makes the best case for this little spot in our town? And, knowing, or at least for me, like knowing that we don't want to keep the status quo there. I actually don't think that is an option, given for the reasons, the mayor has pointed out about the change of the landscape and business landscape and commerce since the time that building was built. And I'd like to think it had a heyday, but that heyday is over. And I think about this particular proposal, and, do I love everything about it? Nope. But I don't love anything about, everything about any proposal, frankly. And I do, however, think it does fit for the reasons described by Ms. Griffin, in with the neighborhood of Richmond Road. And the character of, that corridor of our town, it would work, and it would fit to have this into a multi-use building. I think better than it fits in right now. And I do also think that having units, although I completely agree with the vice mayor that a lot of times it is thrown around about, we're doing something to contribute to the housing stock, when what we really do need are more apartments of bigger sizes than one bedrooms, and that is absolutely true. But when I look at this location, I actually think that there are benefits to having these types of units in this spot, more so than any other area of the town. And the reason being is because I think this will be attractive to college students, and I actually really do like the idea of hopefully relieving some of the pressure to the extent we can on our single-family homes and streets, and hopefully drawing some of students into a building that actually might be better for them, and better for them and where they are in their college career. So I actually think, based on the location, that this is a good fit for a good use of this building. That being said, I do have concerns about the traffic issue, and I do have concerns about making sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and eventually have a building that is all residential. So it's important, I think, to preserve the first floor as commercial. And for those reasons, I would support this proposal, but with the conditions of closing the back entrance onto Matoka Court. Also, that the drive-through I want to make sure that would be cut off, whether or not a patio ever comes to fruition, and some sort of condition to make sure that the first floor does stay commercial. So that's my thoughts.
Ditto. So I think one thing that came out.
Born in 1972?
Unfortunately, I used to go to, except for that. So I used to be a customer of Wachovia Bank when it was used for that purpose. So I thought about that today when I made my mobile deposit of a check. It was a real check, but it was a mobile deposit, and just thinking about how banking has changed over the years and over the generations. I mean, a lot of people don't even have checks anymore and don't even see the need to go to a bank. So I don't think those days will come back. I do agree about the location. I think that, they always say location, 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 and I think that this and what the market will bear fit well with efficiencies and one-bedrooms. So I'm okay with that. I also agree that this will provide a new alternative to some of the older dilapidated houses that are actually in the residential neighborhoods. And we know we have a supply and demand issue, and hopefully as we increase the supply, that will reduce some of the pressure in the neighborhoods. The reason I brought up the request to look at closing off the parking exit that's furthest back is because having driven through there, I realized how close it is to sort of the Matoka Court. You know, the one that's up at the very front makes you feel like you're as close to Richmond Road and you're going to go out and go around. I think for people who have cut through Matoka, particularly the first time, and if they get down to Monticello and they want to turn left, they realize that that was not a good thing to do because the traffic, it's very difficult to make a left turn. I've often gotten to Monticello and made a right turn and come up and around because of the inability to get out. I guess one thing that could happen is the residents could propose to make Mount Vernon a dead end, and then it wouldn't be a cut-through anymore. So that was the reason, though, that I had suggested we look at closing the back parking lot. And I think that one of the reasons that this is coming before us as a special use permit is to allow for discussion and to hear from residents and to find out what their concerns are, and for us to have the ability to put conditions onto the acceptance or not. So I think that that's sort of where we're headed. I did want to make a comment about the specialness of Williamsburg and the pressures on Williamsburg and all cities because of the housing crisis. I mean, we think we're special in that some of the discussions that are taking place across the rest of the Commonwealth are not going to come here, but they very well could. When we go to the General Assembly, when we put together our legislative priority, one of the things we always stress is the ability for localities to maintain their zoning control. But that is getting pressured every single year. Every year, our legislators support us, but that's not the case for across the Commonwealth. There's always a request to have tiny homes, ADUs, developers' rights, things like that by right, whereby we as a municipality don't have the ability to say no. And so I think we have to look at, yes, we're special, but we also have to take, in my view, opportunities like this for readaptive use of a project that adds some housing as to how that helps us down the road meet not only our housing requirements, but to fight back a little bit more when the General Assembly says that they're going to or want to take control away from us. Because as a Dillon rule state, if I'm correct, if something passes at the General Assembly, we are not going to be able to say, we're special and you can't enforce that upon us. So.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Ms. Williams?
Yes, I would like to echo the sentiments from my fellow council members. I do believe that the location, being not far from campus, would highly benefit not just college students, but Gen Z residents of the city, and relieve some of the stress that some of our neighborhoods feel here in the city as well. With that being said, I do have a concern about how it would affect, especially the Matoka Court community, and would like to take that into consideration if this would move forward. I would like to highlight that the conditions outlined by my fellow council members as well, I completely agree that that's something that would need to be in the conversation if this would move forward as well.
So I think if I can just kind of summarize, one of the things that's clear and what I'm hearing is that we want to see developers offer to close the middle entrance. I think there's conversation and maybe some agreement that the third entrance should be closed off as well, and that should be a condition of this application. The other one I think I would want to consider is that the first floor remain commercial as a condition to get the second 2 floors as residential. I think that, is there something? Another one or something?
There was also the proffer, to have no more than 2 people
Okay, yeah,
per,
so the
just to
developer-
kind of very explicit about that. Mhm.
Thank you for that.
And before that, the question was brought, does it make sense to ask the fire department chief if closing off that back entrance would create any concerns for emergency vehicles to get in there
So he,
without putting him on the spot?
Chief Snyder's coming to the spot.
While the chief is coming up, I would just like to say that if you decide to do that, make sure that the motion, or at least the applicant is aware that his contractor can make improvements to the curb and gutter, but we would need to inspect it and then accept it.
Okay. Chief Snyder, would you like to comment on the notion of closing that the
I
second and
think
third?
that I certainly understand the concern. I was looking at the site map while you guys were discussing it up here at the dais, and that my understanding is right now we have one entrance that's off of Richmond Road. We're talking about closing one, and then there's one obviously that goes through the drive-through, which that obviously would not be functional, and then the one behind that you guys are proposing to consider closing. My only concern from a fire department perspective would be, it looks like conceptually the way that I think it would play out, if we would only have one entrance off of Richmond Road coming in to that property. And so on the back side, what we call the C side, like the ladder truck would have to go in and would have to back out if we don't have an access point on that back side. So I'm not saying it's not doable, it's just something that I would like for our team to review a little bit more to make sure that we have the access to the building, and more importantly, once we get in, how we would back out in the event that we try to alter the access points that the current building currently has. So I think for us, my answer would be I'd like to do a little bit more review to make sure that that's the right thing to do from a public safety standpoint. But just conceptually, that would be my initial concern talking about what is being proposed today.
Okay. Well,
So Mayor,
thank you
what you could do is make that condition, and then as part of the permit review, require that the fire department agree, unless that's, a deal breaker for the council's support.
Well, it would seem to me that if that's the will of council to see that third entrance closed, we can say closed, make that a condition to close it upon review of the fire department.
Right.
Mr. Current Chair, you turn your mic on.
That's a sign. I'm good. You got it. Never mind.
I have a question for Ms. Griffin. So, Ms. Griffin, on that, could you envision the ARB approving something that would be temporary that the fire department could?
I think the driveway would be outside of ARB's purview, right?
The ARB can approve site furnishings on commercial buildings. I'm not sure if this can be considered a site furnishing, but that could also be a condition that you place on this.
And I would obviously leave this up to the chief, but in my mind, I was thinking some type of chained access where they could easily cut the chain to exit that, to use that if need be, but I don't want to suggest that if it's not something that would be compatible and look nice, that if ARB does play a role in this, but something that would block the access for everyone else, but they have the magic key to get through, to use that if need be.
I'm confident that for life safety, the ARB would be fine to review it and to look at it and would come up with the best solution for design.
I don't know. Would that make it more acceptable to you, Chief?
Yes, sir, it would. Long as we have access to be able to get out, I think that we can try to address your concerns and also make sure that we are able to do what we need to do. Whatever that solution looks like, we're going to collaborate in the best way that we can. Yeah.
Sorry I didn't bring it up sooner, but I didn't want to, sort of answer one problem and then create another one.
Sure, no, I think it was appropriate to have the chief come forward. So, I think if we condition it to close both entrance, the third entrance closest to the neighborhood be subject to the review of the fire department, and get the fire department's recommendation, then that would be fine with me. And then I think from there, that could be a staff approval position. Yeah, okay.
So a thought would be to close it off upon review by the fire department to ensure life safety access.
Yeah.
Appropriate?
So there's three. You got them?
I think so. Okay.
And one of them would include the proffer by the applicant to limit the density.
So if I don't have it all, please chime in.
I'll try.
So I move to approve PCR 24-026, conditioned on the following. 1, approval of residential uses on the second and third stories is conditioned on the first floor of the building remaining dedicated to commercial uses at all times. No residential uses are permitted on the first floor. 2, in accordance with the proffer, occupancy shall be limited to not more than 2 people per apartment. And 3, the most southwesterly entrance to and from the rear parking area for the building, exiting onto Matoka Court, shall be permanently closed prior to the issuance of any occupancy permit, and no ingress or egress from said entrance shall be permitted. And this is based upon review by the fire department to ensure life safety access. Therefore, the egress may be modified depending upon the fire department's position. Secondly, the exit from the drive-through entrance shall be closed permanently.
I think that, to me, encapsulate everything. Somebody like to make
Got it
a
all.
second?
Second?
Okay, thank you. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern Chair?
Aye.
Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Flackus. Okay, takes us now to reports, and we have our monthly financial statement. Dameron?
Good afternoon, and we will review the, let's go. Going the wrong way, wait a minute. Which way? Okay. Thank you. Need a little help there. I'm still going though. That was okay. Well, that's what I had the first time. But anyway, we're straight now. We want to review our revenues as of January. And as our bar graph there shows, our real estate tax revenue is coming in strong. We are at about 50.8% of budget compared to last year's 51.4%. And the revenue is at this point about 8.3% higher than last year this time. On our personal property, though, we are seeing a bit of a dip. It's about 3.6% less than where we were at last year, and at 87.5% of our budget versus 90.8% last year. That typically can change year over year at this point in time. I will say that our staff's working hard. They're sending out delinquent bills. We have submitted to the state's debt set-off program, and what that debt set-off program does is that anyone that has an income tax return coming back that owes taxes, if there's not another higher priority lien against that, they will revert that to the city. And then we also do DMV stops, which means if you haven't paid your taxes, you will not be able to register your vehicle until those taxes are paid. And then we just see a slight dip, less than 1% on our business personal property. And that represents maybe about $12,000. And again, usually about this time of year, I'm getting a little concerned when I see that low. But if you look back at previous years, we typically see that, and by the end of the year, the collections are coming in just on a delinquent basis. And then our room tax, we see a 3.3% increase over last year, which is about $68,000 more. So we're happy to see that. Our meals tax, we're seeing a 6.5% increase, so that equates to about $302,000 there. And we have seen that meals increase year over year for the last several years. And then our January 1% sales tax, our regular sales tax, we are coming in about 1.6% less than last year. And so that's about $41,000. I am anxious, and by next week, we should be getting in our tax for February that represents December's activity. This, at this point, just represents through November. And so I'm hoping we see an uptick there, and then as the weather improves, hopefully that will improve.
So just to be clear, when we look at this January report, we're looking at November activity.
Right, that's right, it's November. And then our $2 lodging tax, we see a 6.3% increase. So that's very promising. I really haven't seen it this much of an increase since COVID. So we'll continue to be watching that and monitoring that. And then our historic sales tax, we are down about 6.3% with that. And that's about $73,000 less. So tells me two things. One, we'll be watching for that February sales tax that represents December to come in. And secondly, since our groceries and personal hygiene items are not taxed here, and we don't see as big a dip in the regular sales tax, people are pulling back a little bit. You know, they're sticking with the essentials, but on the more luxury items, a little bit of pullback there. And then I'd like to note, I have updated these charts. They really haven't changed a lot, but since we have completed our audit and finalized our annual report, I did update them with actual numbers, but again, not a lot of difference there. You can see the trend lines really haven't changed. This particular slide shows our sales tax, room, meals, the items that we've just went over on the bar chart. And then the next one reports our real estate, personal property, and business taxes, or business personal property. And again, not a lot of change there, but they are now actual numbers. And that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron. I have one question. I don't know that you have the answer right off the top of your head, and maybe you do. Do you know the ratio, and we look at real estate tax, the ratio between residential tax and commercial?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can break that out. I can do that, and so we will get that information to you.
Yeah, great. That'd be, if we, maybe next month when you give the report.
Sure.
I appreciate that. Mr. Vice Mayor, any
Yeah,
questions?
no questions. Just thanks again for taking the time to put the graphics together. Extremely helpful.
Thank you, no questions.
Thank you, and I will reiterate Vice Mayor Dent's comment about the graphics. Having that visualization is not only much easier for me, I think for anyone reading it and the public to understand as well.
Yes, thank you, and I have no questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron. Leads us to monthly departmental operating reports. Do we have anybody this month?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think it's going to be Human Services.
All right. Welcome, Ms. Evans.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to stick with the theme today and talk about our employment and housing program. These programs are supported by grants from the Virginia Department of Social Services. 2024, we actually had 2 grants. This fiscal year, we are relying on one of those grants, which is $150,000. So our employment services are offered regionally with James City and York, and they're facilitated by our life coach, Chris Conley. And our housing navigator position, we filled that a little over a year ago and was filled by Ed Schneider, who you may know. So our employment services assist individuals who have barriers to either obtaining employment or maintaining it. And so we assist with writing resumes, enrolling in job skills training programs, or helping them just apply for a job and get that interview. So our Mr. Conley does these strength assessments and then helps coach individuals about how to highlight their strengths to actually land the job. We also, through the grant, are allowed to offer financial assistance, so whether it's paying for somebody's phone or internet or clothing for them to be able to obtain a job. We continue to do our Customer Service Academy, and so that's a month-long program. We actually are holding one of those classes this month in February. Moving forward for our employment services, we're looking to expand our training and services to potentially existing businesses and employees. So we've been starting to connect more with Ms. Matsumoto and the Economic Development Office, so that's been a great new development. So for our housing navigator, Mr. Schneider, he's been very busy since we brought him on board. So since July, he has met with 114 families who came in seeking housing assistance. So they were either facing eviction or they were in a motel and needed to get into permanent housing. He conducts assessments with the family. They look at, income, employment, natural resources, community resources, and we evaluate somebody's ability to maintain rent and payments, right? We don't ever want to get somebody into a lease and then they're not able to continue, because that's going to result in eviction and then another barrier to future housing. So most people that come in are typically, there's a lapse in their income. It may be due to weather, or they get sick and they don't get that pay, or they're in between jobs and they don't have that cushion to fill that gap. Our housing navigator position, he's helped 22 families find permanent housing since July and prevented 23 additional families from being evicted. And that was just his position. Our other programs also help with housing, so it's been very successful. We don't do this in a silo, as you know. We collaborate and coordinate with our partner agencies and nonprofits and faith-based organizations. And so sometimes it takes several resources and partners working together to package a deal to actually meet the need of that family and stabilize them. Mr. Schneider's also been building relationships with landlords, which is key for us and has been a great, seemed to be very effective. And so landlords will refer people directly to us, or, we're kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of when there's units available. So it's hard to find a unit, so we're able to kind of do that match, find the right tenant and match them with the right landlord. As we look forward to the upcoming year, we're going to cross our fingers that we will continue funding. The grants, it's pretty uncertain whether the TANF grants will be available, or whether we'll be even eligible to apply for them. And we also did not receive the grant from Centera to continue our Home First program. So we are kind of reevaluating, looking at all our programs, looking at different funding strategies and grants that are available. So regardless of that, our staff are going to continue to make those matches, do those assessments, and leverage any type of resources that are currently available. So I don't want to end my talk talking about money, because that's not really my thing, but so I thought I'd share some stories about how this has impacted a couple people's lives. So we had one mom who was experiencing domestic violence. Law enforcement was involved, and she suddenly separated from her spouse. So we were able to cover 2 months' rent while she obtained employment because she was unable to work prior due to the relationship. And so we assisted her with securing that housing in her name so she could remain there safely. And she secured full-time work, and she's there with her 2 kids. So that was a great success for our team. We had another mom who was literally homeless, so in the shelter. And so we worked with some church partners to help her stay in shelter. Our life coach helped her with getting employment. So she went in for an interview for a part-time job and came out with a full-time job, secured childcare, and then within the next month, she qualified for housing and we moved her to an apartment. And she's still there, doing great, checks in quite a bit. So those are just the stories, and hopefully they'll illustrate how supporting the housing and employment will really make a tremendous impact on the long-term health of a family. So our GIO, we do have one that's focused on transitional housing and emergency housing. So we are, again, evaluating our programs, looking for funding, and hopefully by July 1, we'll be able to launch some new program or models. So that's what we're looking forward to. So that's it. So I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you, Ms. Evans. I don't think I have any questions, but just a general comment. When I think about the examples that you gave, of the stories that you've told, it's kind of the untold story of Williamsburg. A lot of us who don't live in that circle don't see the real needs of some of our residents, and so the service that you provide sometimes goes unthanked, goes without thanks. And so really thank you and your team for doing all that, and really thank you to the residents who support through its tax paying the opportunity to help residents that need it. So thank you everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Evans. I don't have any questions as well, but I too would like to say thank you to you and your staff for all of the work you do and sharing those success stories. And I know you'll recall this, but we attended a session a few years ago, and there's one thing that always stuck in my mind is every person that spoke at that session talked about how not having stable housing affected everything else in their life. And I mean, it made enough impact on me that I remember that and could visualize each person that said that. So I'm sure y'all see it all the time, but tremendous work that you do to get people on the right track through employment and housing.
Thank you. Yes, well, thank you. I did have one question to clarify. The housing navigator, Mr. Schneider, who is just an amazing person, and then the employment resources also, those are funded through a TANF grant, you said? Okay, and that's okay, I just wanted to clarify that, and knowing that it's uncertain times, and I appreciate that, when you're doing truly life-changing work, and I know from, that's very hard to do, and so, please extend my thanks to your staff and to you, because it's work that's hard to just sort of go home for the day and not think about anymore. And so I know that the work that you do and that your team does, like that takes a lot. And so you are seen and appreciated. And I also know that not knowing, if a grant's going to be renewed, or if you're going to have, a funding source, if that grant doesn't come through, will the other one come through? That's another layer of stress into the work that you do. And so I just want to elevate that, because you're really at the front lines of fighting on multiple battlefronts. So that's that is hard work. And so I know that we all really appreciate that, and want to publicly acknowledge that you and your team are doing probably the hardest work in town. So thank you so much.
Yes, and I would just like to reiterate my thanks as well. And if I remember correctly, the housing navigator position hasn't been there that long.
Right, it's been a little over a year.
So I would say the proof is in the pudding as far as the impact of having that person to help so many other individuals and families in the community that, to Stacy's point, trying to find the money to continue that is very important through various grants, foundations, whatever is necessary. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you, Ms. Evans, for the information you shared here today, and thank you for your work and the work of your remarkable staff as well at making a difference, and it truly a remarkable impact here in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Okay, city manager's report. Anything, Mr. Trivett?
None today, Mayor.
You said that with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Anything from the city attorney?
Nothing else today.
All right, takes us now to open forum, and I do have several speakers' cards, but even without a card, you're welcome to come forward. And first I have Mr. Robert Wilson. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Wilson at 22 The Palisades. Yesterday, I provided a letter to you highlighting my comments on the 2024 Comprehensive Annual Financial Plan or report. The public can access these comments at the Williamsburg Independent, but I wanted to highlight a few of my thoughts. First, from the Town and Gown report that we saw on Monday, I kind of learned that William Mary has grown by over 1,000 full-time students since 2021. And the annual report indicates that the total city population over that period only grew 500. So if my math is right, the non-student population in the city has actually been declining over that period. In addition, there's been 1,000 dorm rooms between Yates, Old Dominion, and Brown that have been taken offline. So the combined 1,756 to 2,000 students, additional students, now live off campus. Puts a lot of pressure on the surrounding communities, and I kind of wonder whether the increased number of off-campus students is forcing out some of the families that are in the single-family homes in the communities surrounding the college. And it also makes it real difficult to try to achieve some of the affordable housing goals when you have roughly 600 housing units over the last 3 years occupied by students. A second of what I learned from the annual financial report, general property tax revenues increased over 50% in the last 3 years, fueled largely by double-digit increases in residential real estate assessments. And to answer your question, Mayor, residential real estate assessments represent about 65% of the total taxable property tax assessed value.
Thank you.
Only about 4,300 property owners support much of the city's activities, since William Mary pays virtually no real estate taxes, and any real estate tax payments from students are de minimis. Third, expenditure for government activities over the period increased 34%, well above the inflation rate, and the city staff have increased by 30 full-time equivalents despite a declining non-student population. It seems ironic to me that the city staff has increased more than the non-student population of the city. Fourth, this increased spending did not include education despite all the fuss last year. Since 2020, education spending increased only 4%, and adjusted for inflation actually decreased by 18% in real dollars. I hope this information is helpful as the city begins its fiscal 26 budget cycle. I understand that the public is invited to the city's budget retreat that begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the new fire station's operations room. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next speaker's card I have is Mr. Paul Scott. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Paul Scott. I live right up the street at 719 Lafayette Street, but I am here representing Child Development Resources. We're a local nonprofit that provides early intervention services to infants and toddlers. Wanted to be here really today to thank you for consideration of our funding request for our programs, but also for the renovation of Waller Mill Road, which is about a quarter way through renovations. We hope to move in January or February of 2026. And I'm looking forward to working with the staff on attending the work session that I believe is scheduled in a next month to show photographs of the progress and give you an update. But they've roughed in HVAC, plumbing, and starting on framing and electrical. So the building's coming along. It's been a total gut job, and it's stripped all the way down to the studs. So at that location, which is right up the road here at 312 Waller Mill, is where we plan to establish our the region's first family resource center. And that'll allow us to better serve families here in the community with early intervention services for infants and toddlers, again, with delays and disabilities. But we also provide a variety of other services at no cost to the families. So we have fatherhood programming. We also offer motherhood programming that includes infant massage, lactation support, and a moms and babies course. We even just started a baby wrapping and baby wearing course and training for some of the moms. So we're here for anyone in the city that is expecting a child, has a young child, and want to also emphasize that any child care providers here in the city also have access to our free program that provides quality improvement and technical assistance for child care providers here in the city. I wanted to keep my comments short and just again thank you for considering our request. Save some time for a parent speaker who will be joining you and speaking to you shortly. I just want to say thanks and appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. So that must mean Caitlin Ewer wants to speak next. Welcome.
Hi, counselors. My name is Caitlin Ewer. Thank you for the opportunity today to share my experience. I did have my son with me earlier, but luckily he is long gone. Not enough ice cream would have kept him sitting through this. But he's almost 3 now, and we're expecting a second baby boy in June. Jackson was born unexpectedly at VCU Hospital at 33 weeks after I was diagnosed with a severe and sudden onset of preeclampsia at 32 weeks. He was 4 pounds and 9 ounces when he was born, and we lived in the NICU for 30 days. I not only, excuse me, had fear and trauma from birth experience and the NICU stay, but also severe postpartum depression. Once we were settled home and our families, aka all of our help, had left, I was left with all of my first-time motherhood fears and a tiny preemie baby boy I didn't feel equipped to care for. I felt like nothing I did was right. Bottle feeding, sleeping, breastfeeding, bonding were all a major struggle, and it wasn't the picture-perfect image of motherhood I thought I was going to have. I somehow heard of motherhood program offered by CDR. I think a couple friends had mentioned to me, and I wasn't really willing to get out of the house and try anything new at that point. So I had sent an email and I got a response right away, and within 2 days I was enrolled in an infant massage class. So I was like, why not? Let's give this a try. And that was in October of 2022. Jackson was about 3.5 months old, and it did so many things for us. It helped me bond in a quiet and physical way with my preemie baby that I didn't have before. I learned methods to soothe his gas, his mood. It brought me out of the house and gave me a scheduled activity among other moms, and I started to not feel so isolated. After that first class, I then started the baby weight stations on Monday, where you can go and get lactation consultants to help you with feeding, and you can weigh your baby before and after in between pediatrician visits, which was huge for us because, like I said, he was a preemie and he was very, very small. We were able to make sure he was getting what he needed, and that helped me mentally, emotionally, and physically. The nurses and experienced lactation specialist really helped me with bottle feeding and tips to help my baby latch, and if he was gaining necessary weight, it was a huge weight off of my family and as me as a mom, knowing that we were on the right track. My family, siblings, and childhood friends are all in Pennsylvania. Nobody here I was friends with was a mother of young children, or really was a mom. I was very isolated, alone, and overwhelmed. I leapt out of my comfort zone and attended the stroller strides down on Duke of Gloucester Street on Friday mornings. It gave me a motherhood fellowship and much needed advice and support from the attending staff as well. This is really, truly when my relationship with my son started to blossom. In turn, our whole family benefited from a more confident and fulfilled wife and mother. And now I'm willing to do it again, 2.5 years later. But I couldn't be more thankful for the resources at CDR that we were provided with and without charge. We are residents and business owners in the city of Williamsburg. We had plenty of stress from the hospital stay, the financial burdens, and from, like I said, being business owners in downtown Colonial Williamsburg. Today, we continue to spread the word of the wonders of CDR and show our support at the annual Oyster Roast. If anyone's lucky enough to get one of my husband's bracelets, we donate to help them do that as well for the raffle. I believe it's our responsibility to ensure CDR can not only grow and expand, but have the resources to provide services for more people like us and less fortunate. The support of City of Williamsburg will make a tremendous difference in lives of its residents as well. The resources I received with loving and non-judgmental open arms was something that was a major turning point in my motherhood journey, and I couldn't be more appreciative for the opportunity to tell you about it today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ewart.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other speakers card, but I see Mr. Crambiel ready to, oh. Welcome, sir.
David Crambiel, 201 Harrison Avenue, also a business owner as well as and a rental home owner. Well, I just had a few positive comments. I wanted to thank Andrew and the City Council for actually describing the projects that were described Monday at the work session. I mean, I think the roundabout, of course, is everybody's concerned about it, especially people like myself who've been a lot of places with a lot of different roundabouts. Some work and some don't. But the fact that we had that discussion and we had other discussions about the improvements, I think was great. And if we did it other years, I must have been out of town or not paid attention. But I just would reinforce that you continue to do that, because reading the document that Tevye produces is many, 100 pages, I think, and this really helps you see what's going on, so that's very positive. I also want to commend you on how you dealt with a very complicated issue on a very fragile neighborhood, and I think you did it well. And I mean, this is kind of obvious, but it seems to me it's pretty easy to make a driveway so that it has in-ground things that rise up and stay up until somebody presses a button, and then they go down. And then the fire truck, and you make it big and wide, it's whatever you want, and it's totally sightly while it's up. So at any rate, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Crambiel, Dr. Crambiel. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the open forum and we'll move on to unfinished business, and I don't believe we have any. Takes us to new business, and we have several items. First is consideration and acceptance of the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ending June 30th of 2024. Welcome, Mr. Hawkins. Or Ms. Dameron, do you want to introduce him? Man that needs no introduction, but.
We're very happy to be presenting this report today, and we have our auditor, Aaron Hawkins. He's a member of Robertson, Farmer & Cox, to share his perspective on that.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, members of council, Mr. Mayor, for having me here this afternoon to present the results of the audit and the financial statements for fiscal year 24. I think during fiscal year 23, you weren't seeing me here until probably April or May or so. So we've made some improvements as the city has adapted to turnover in staff, tremendous turnover in staff that they've had the past couple of years. So much progress has been made in the FY24 audit that we encountered with this, in the preparation and getting to where we are now. Obviously, we want to be here in December though, and so that's the goal for FY25. But going to go over, as I usually do with the financial statements, I've flagged some pages that I think may be most relevant to you all that you may want to look at, and then I'll open it for any questions that you may have for me. Does everyone up there have a hard copy of the report? I know there's also a PDF of the report out there as well. So when I reference pages, though, since I've got a hard copy in front of me, I'm going to be referencing the hard copy, the pages you see, numbers you see at the bottom, as opposed to a PDF page number. If you happen to be listening to this or seeing this and follow along on the PDF, I'm talking about the numbers at the bottom of the report. So page 1 is where I always begin, and this is our auditor's report, which contains our opinion on the financial statements. It is an unmodified opinion, which means that based on our testing, The financial statements that follow these pages can be relied upon to be materially correct based on the testing that we've done as your auditors. I'm going to point out page 4 as a key section to go over. This is the management discussion and analysis. We call it the MD&A for short. This is prepared entirely by the finance department. It really provides a lot of background for information that impacted the fiscal year. You know, these financial statements that get prepared after this, all these exhibits and schedules, there's really a set format for how all these exhibits and statements should look. And so this MD&A gives a chance to really just provide some information outside of those set statements to give background for why those numbers were what they were. Compare current year numbers to prior year numbers, things like that. So I always just want to point that out as a good area to go over because I think it's very beneficial to read. On page 23, Exhibit 3 is where your fund statements begin. I always like to hone in on the general fund, let you know about your fund balance at the end of the year. Your first column on this page is your general fund, and at the bottom you see, towards the bottom, you see your fund balances, which is $25,611,399. Of that, almost all of it is unassigned, which means it's for use at the city's discretion. And how you got to that figure can be seen on Exhibit 5, which is your changes in your fund balance during the year. And that first column on there is your general fund, and you'll see at the bottom, you began the year with about $23.2 million in your fund balance for your general fund. Ended the year at that figure we just saw, the 25.6, so about a $2.3 million increase in your general fund balance. Jumping ahead to page 103, these are your budget to actual comparison schedules, and this is very useful, and I think budget season is upon you, so this is a good source to look at how you performed actual versus budget by detailed lines. Schedule 1 is your revenues, and Schedule 2 is your expenditures. Jumping ahead to page 126, of all these, at the back of this report, there's a statistical section, and we have various tables that show the past 10 years of data for the city. One that's usually is a table that's most useful to people who want to look at is how much of our taxes do we collect during the year. And during 2024, you can see that tax collections were at a 99.11% collection rate, so an improvement over the last year and a strong collection percentage for your property taxes. Jumping ahead to page 135, this is the report that we issue in relation to government auditing standards that we're supposed to test controls and state compliance, and if we had findings to report based on those internal control testing and state compliance testing, we would report those findings here. We'd identify them, but we do not have any findings to report in relation to that. And then on page 137, this is our report on the federal compliance work that we have to do for the city. Any entity, government, nonprofit, that gets over $750,000 of federal assistance has to have a single audit for federal compliance, and the city of Williamsburg falls into that category. So you all have to have a federal audit, single audit, while doing your financial statement audit as well, and this is our report and opinion on the federal compliance work that we have to do. If we had findings to report from federal testing, we would report those here. We do not have any findings to report on the federal compliance work that we did. And the two programs that we tested for your federal compliance this year were the ARPA funding that you all, I think, may have completed that this year. I don't know if there was any left or not. If there is any left, there's probably not much at this point, but we tested the ARPA funding, and then your food stamp administrative program, SNAP program, was the other program that we tested. And that concludes the pages that I wanted to go over with you. I'm glad to do my best to answer any questions that you have for me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Hawkins. I know that you spent some time with the audit committee, which I chair, and there's two resident that serve on that committee, and we had a good, robust discussion, and I think general feeling coming out of that meeting was one of appreciation that the city is in good standing and that your audit results have demonstrated, an unmodified report. So just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for that. Since this report has been completed, have you been made aware of anything that needs to be in the report that wasn't in the report?
I have been emailed. There was an individual who emailed me recently. As an auditor, I have nothing that I've been made aware that I need to change in this financial statements to alter my opinion or the statements. No.
Well, that answers my question. Okay, thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, anything?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you for the report, and Ms. Dameron, thank you to you and your staff for all of the hard work to get us here, and hopefully look forward to that, seeing you back in December of this year.
Yes, thank you very much. And the question I have is one of really like understanding nomenclature. This is obviously, there's a lot of lingo in the space that those of us who are not, auditors may not understand. And I was just curious, really at the end, you were talking about, 2 programs that were chosen to be tested.
Absolutely.
So how do you, what does that mean to be tested? And then how do you select what you're testing?
That's a very good question. So when you have federal programs, you have 2 different types. There are type A programs and type B programs. Type A programs are your large programs that are over $750,000. Those have to be tested once every 3 years, have to be, if they're over $750,000. Now they can still be tested if they're a high-risk program. The ARPA program is identified by the federal government as being high risk, so it has to be tested. Any year that you have this program and you have over $750,000, you have to test it. And then you also have to reach a certain threshold percentage of federal expenditures that you're testing. Being that the city was late last year with their filing of this report, we have to test 40% of testing. We can't just test 20. Get back to doing this in December, and all of a sudden, getting this done more timely, where we can get the thing submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse by March 31st, and it goes back to being 20%. So doing that ARPA funding didn't quite get us to the 40. So at that point, we were able to select basically any program that we wanted to test to put us over that 40% threshold. And I think just doing an analysis, the food stamp program was kind of a perfect fit to put us just over that threshold.
Right. Thank you. That helps.
Okay. Ms. Ramsey?
So thank you for the report, and I, like Stacy, am not an auditor. Thankfully, I haven't been recently, so appreciate that. But when you say tested, what do you mean by tested?
Another good question. So the OMB, and I'm going to use a lot of
acronyms.
I know I'm using terminology that us auditors are used to, but not anyone else. So the federal government puts out a document, and it's called a compliance supplement, OMB compliance supplement. And that's almost like a handbook, a manual that says all these things that need to be tested for each program: allowable activities, cash management, period of availability. If they use subrecipients, it really outlines all the test work that we have to do, and we have work papers that are tailored to that handbook that's put out by the federal government. And so for each program that we do, we know what they want us to test. It's a variety of tests that we do to be in line with that handbook, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, thank you for the report. I also had a question along the lines of testing. I wanted to know if all the tests are standardized, or are they different for each program?
They are different. So if we're just still talking about the federal testing that we do, yeah, some of them are the same, but some of them are very different. It just depends on the program. But for these 2 programs, they're very much different programs. So the testing is quite different for them.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Hawkins, thank you for coming forward, and thank you for doing the work, and look forward to seeing you in December.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
You too. Next is consideration and action regarding the tour. Or do we need to vote on that?
Yeah, you need to vote to accept the
Thank you, I'm
report.
sorry. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the audit?
So I move that we accept the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ending June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernchan.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Takes us now to item B, consideration and action regarding the Tourism Promotion Contingency request from the Muscarelle Museum of Arts for marketing and promotion efforts of the Michelangelo, the Genesis of Sistine Special Exhibition. Ms. Carballa.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons, members of City Council. As you mentioned, I'm here to present another application for the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund, which is proving to be quite popular this year. As always, I wanted to present a little background on the program. The program was developed to provide startup funding for new projects or events, or funding for existing projects and events that are adding new elements or enhancements, all with the intention to increase overnight visitation to the city. I've highlighted a few past projects here, but I will go into a little bit more historical data detail on the next slide. Before I do, I wanted to note that the FY25 TPCF budget was $150,000, of which $54,030 have been awarded, leaving a remainder of $95,970. Because of the popularity of this program in recent months, we wanted to present a snapshot of the TPCF program to date. Since it was first included in the FY16 budget, a total of $461,000 has been awarded to 14 applicants. I will also note that if the award is granted today, the total will edge over that $500,000 mark. On the graph before you, you can see a breakdown year by year, and includes the program the program budget in teal for each year, the funding requests in dollars in gold, and then the actual awards given in dollars in the peachy kind of pink color. For FY16, 17, and 19, the budget was $50,000 each year. It was not funded in FY18, and then beginning in FY20, the budget increased to $150,000 and has been that way ever since. You'll note that there were no awards in FY21, which makes sense due to the pandemic situation at the time. There was then slow growth in FY22 and 23, and then significant growth in interest in FY24 and 25, with the requests exceeding the budgets. And then this brings us to today's request. The very newly renovated and reopened Muscarelle Museum of Art has requested $150,000 for the purpose of marketing and promotion efforts for the upcoming exhibit, the Michelangelo, the Genesis of the Sistine. As you may remember, in years past, the Muscarelle has featured exhibits from Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Botticelli, all of which garnered a lot of attention and buzz for the museum and the area. Before you are some marketing details. You can see that the marketing kind of is geared toward overnight visitation, targets people 35 to 65 and up who are high income earners, focuses on the Mid-Atlantic region, and then marketing channels include email, social media, print collateral, and William & Mary news and alumni outlets. Let's see. The staff did meet to review the application and determine its recommendation, and their recommendation is to award the remainder of the FY25 TPCF balance of $95,970 to the Muscarelle Museum of Art. Julie Tucker from the Muscarelle is here today. She is the museum's marketing and events manager, if you do have any additional questions.
Thank you, Ms. Scarballa. Yeah, I don't know that I have any questions. I think the supporting this makes sense to me. You know, think back to the last time we had the Michelangelo exhibit here. I mean, it was met with great fanfare. I mean, people came from everywhere, and I think back that there was a number of room nights that were booked, and that was reported to us, and it was pretty significant. And as we look at the opening of the new museum and to be able to attract this type of exhibit into that new forum, I think is a great opportunity and one which I think we should support. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I agree. I think this is an investment that'll do exactly what we expected the fund to do, and that was to get those room nights. And I think it's a great use of this funding.
Thank you. I actually just have a couple questions about the program, just in case people aren't aware of how this program works. So, is the application cycle just rolling, so you
Yes,
get
it is.
applicants throughout the year?
Yes, it is a rolling cycle. Basically, we accept applications until the funds are depleted.
Okay, and then, so if we grant this today, then that, like, there you have it for the year.
that's it for the year,
You know,
yeah.
it's over. And then what happens next? So what happens next year? Like, if people, you know, if there are groups or projects going on in town that are looking to the future, when does that new application cycle start again? And do you roll over applications that maybe, how does the process work, really?
Right. It would be contingent on what City Council decides to put into the program for the next fiscal year. But come July 1, we're willing to accept those applications. For those, if we do have applicants who do apply now or who are interested now, I would certainly just let them know that the funds are gone for the year. But come July 1, contingent on City Council's approval, they are certainly welcome to reapply.
Okay, that's really helpful to know. And with respect to this particular proposal and project, it sounds extraordinary, and I know that Ms. Tucker does an amazing work over there with the Muscarelle, so I think it would, you know, it's going to be a very successful event, I'm sure, and I'm glad that as the city we can do something to contribute to that.
So thank you, Ms. Grabala. I did have one question about the chart and the historical data.
Yep, I can get back to that too.
So if I'm reading this correctly, like in FY '24, it shows that we have the base funds of $150,000. We had 2 applicants that requested more than the $150,000, but we gave out less than $150,000. Is that correct? or-
Yes, one of those applications was an applicant that they were applying, but the date didn't quite match up with the timeline, so they were ineligible at that time. And they were one that we actually offered, or they reapplied again this current fiscal year. So it
Okay.
was- yeah.
And so any funds that aren't awarded in a fiscal year are not carried over, they go back to the general
TDF.
fund?
To the
correct?
TDF, yes.
Right. And so for FY '25, I assume that if we award this $95,000, then our pink line will come up and equal our blue line.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And having been involved with this for a number of years, I think that, you know, as you mentioned, we've given them out to a lot of different organizations and all different awards. And to me, it's also helped to sort of jumpstart an event. I remember giving funds to, you know, the Jazz Festival and the Global Film Festival, and how they've expanded and brought in people for longer stays and events. And anyone who attended the reopening of the Muscarelle last week, I think can really be excited about this exhibit coming and what it's going to do to put Williamsburg on the art scene. I think one thing that's really different for this exhibit than from the past exhibit is, as I understand it, Williamsburg will be the only one hosting this exhibit, as opposed to it being here and then traveling to Boston. So I guess we better get ready for all of those Bostonians to come down here and see it, since they won't be getting their own. So I completely support this effort.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, well, thank you for your report today. I also completely support this initiative. I think it's great to bring in such a world-renowned artist to work, especially here to Williamsburg, especially when we think of tourism and also the Williamsburg experience. So thank you again.
So, we ready?
Yep.
I move that City Council award $95,970 from the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund to the Muscarelle Museum of Art for marketing and promotional efforts for the Michelangelo, the Genesis of the Sistine Special Exhibition. This will close out the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund program for FY '25.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern Chair?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us to item C, which is the announcement of the mayoral appointments and boards and commissions. I see, Mr. Griffith, did you want to make any comments?
So, every election season, we have the organizational meeting, and part of that organizational meeting is adopting the council's policies and procedures manual. One of the attachments to that are the appointments of the mayoral appointments to boards and commissions of the various staff members and city council members. Obviously, we don't have that ready for the organizational meeting because at that meeting we elect the mayor. And so now we're prepared to make those appointments. So essentially, you're just re-adopting the council policies and procedures manual with that attachment.
Okay. So we all have discussed it, and I've made the appointments, and I think everybody's happy to be where they're at. And it's available. Rather than reading through all of them, I'll just say that if anybody's interested, the policy procedures manual is online. Take a look at it. And so with that, would somebody, any comments first? Somebody like to make an appointment to?
Do you accept them? So I move that the policy and procedures manual be accepted, which includes the mayoral appointments to boards and commissions.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
And I will say that it is part of the agenda, the policy and procedures manual, so it makes it easy to pull it up without hunting on the website.
All right, item D is consideration and appointment to boards and commissions. Do we have any appointments, Mr. Vice Mayor?
We do. I move the city council appoint Regina Coney to the Architectural Review Board for a 4-year term effective immediately and ending on December 31, 2028.
Second.
Okay.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
I don't believe we have any closed session. Is that correct?
Closed session.
All right. That concludes our meeting. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey? Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. We're adjourned.